You ready to go?
Yeah, I'm good.
Hey, well, look at this. If you're seeing us, you should be seeing a whole lot of screens over there. You should be seeing that guy there, the Cleavester, and then we got that other guy there. That's Francis Chan. He's not even on the podcast, but we've worked out how to bring the whole screen thing in there. And so, as you might have guessed, we are wanting to look at that Holy Communion, the reason for gathering of the church. Francis Chan's got himself into a little bit of a pickle, and it's a very interesting subject, though, so worthwhile talking about. But to start off, we got to do the jingle. You ready? Oh, that's not the jingle. That's Hebrew. Oh, where is the jingle? I don't even know where it is. Hang on. Just everybody be cool. All right, so it's on. Sojourner time.
It's good.
Sojourner time. All right, so Francis Chan. South Africans say Francis. What did we say? Francis Chan. It's very inconsistent. We should say Francis Chan. Americans are really consistent there, right?
Well, based on what he's saying, we could call him Frankie Chan after the Pope.
Ah, yes, Frankie Chan. Although my sympathies lie with this guy. The problem, okay, so I know we haven't even played the video for anyone who is not up to speed on this, but I'll just say this up front. I think, you know what it reminds me of? This whole thing reminds me of when you're living in that charismatic, crazy world, and, you realize, like, let's say, wait a minute, it's not sola scriptura, it's sola scriptura, and that means tradition is important, and then you become a Roman Catholic. It's just like 1, 2, skip a few, all the way. So
and you said you're in sympathy with that?
No, well, I'm in sympathy with being a charismatic, realizing that you've been without tradition or something the whole way, to use the analogy. But in this case, of course, it's the Lord's Supper. I mean, it's a lot of. I mean, what he's doing is he's identifying a very real lack and messed upness about evangelical Christianity, and even Baptists. Let's just go there and say Baptists, Reformed Baptists. Even you just don't have the place given to the sacrament that really you need to have at some level. And then there will become. I think there will come an inevitable starvation of some sort, and unless you're aware of the various sort of points that have been worked on, you might make an extreme move, and Francis Chan has always struck me as quite an extreme character. He's always like, I'm going to quit my church so I can just, I mean, normally pastors go, listen, I need a week off. I need to think about it. But he needs to quit his church or replant it or whatever. So he seems like quite an extreme guy. And that's playing into all of this. But maybe we should just try running the video before
let's run it and then make comments.
Run it, because otherwise we're just gonna and if he says something particular, I should be able to stop it, and hopefully everyone is seeing this too, or hearing this if you're listening.
Taking of the body and blood of Christ somehow, in some real way. Again, I'm not making any like grand statements. I'm just saying some of this stuff I didn't know. I didn't know that for the first 1,500 years of church history, everyone saw it as the literal body and blood of Christ.
We got to talk about that.
And it wasn't until 500 years ago that someone popularized a thought that it's just a symbol and nothing more.
It's a little simplistic. Should we stop it there?
Wow. Well,
stop it there.
Because that's a lot to talk about already.
Okay, so I mean, let me give you my impression. I was the one who asked that we have a look at this video.
Right.
So here's a guy, like you say, probably not from a Reformed background, Apparently he studied at master seminary.
Yeah.
So he might just have sort of more of a Baptistic, maybe towards the charismatic sort of background.
Yeah.
He's known as a neo-radical. So he's not known for his confessionalism. He's not known for his depth in systematic theology. He's known for his commitment, his missional focus, etc.
Yeah.
And it seems to me he's making the typical reductionistic mistakes.
Yeah.
Of trying to paint with too broad a brush.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think let's give him credit where credit is due.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably just about to celebrate communion, and you can't say everything that needs to be said.
Yes.
So he's probably trying to wrap it up in big picture terms, but he's wrapping it up in such a way as to miscommunicate.
Where is he? Where is that?
I have no idea.
It's like on the street or something.
No idea.
Okay.
But I mean, so just taking that first statement that he said, for the first 1,500 years of the church, everybody, and I mean everybody, believed in the literal body and blood of Christ being partaken of in the Lord's Supper. That's just not an accurate statement. Even if you accept transubstantiation as your teaching, that's not what transubstantiation believes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was the Lateran Council of 1215, which only formally brought in transubstantiation as the formal teaching of the Catholic Church.
Right. And that's
quite
there
late.
Was
Differences between Radburdus and Radramnus.
Yeah.
And almost every generation there were differences between what the view really was. But here's the kicker with transubstantiation.
Mm-hmm.
Because transubstantiation, following the Aristotelian categories of the accidents and the externals,
mm-hmm.
the accidents and the essence. The accidents being the external, the appearance of blood, the appearance of bread, the appearance of wine, the taste of bread, the taste of wine. But then the essence inside the bread becomes the blood. So just to be very technical, they didn't believe they were drinking literal blood. They believed that they were drinking not the accidents of blood, but the essence of blood.
Mm-hmm.
And so it wasn't literal blood in the full-blooded, excuse the word, sense of the term.
Yeah.
And likewise with the bread. So even that much, it's just lacking nuance. It's an overstatement.
Right.
It's painting with too broad a brush.
Yeah. Yeah. True. And so it's set up for. It's not like that's the thing that he's ultimately sort of trying to prove here, or it's not what he's ultimately driving at. But it just kind of, I think what it does do is it makes you think, okay, well, if the broad brush is being used at that level, probably the solution. Or at least the solution that he's hinting at doesn't need to be with such a simplistic broad brush either. And there's probably more of a fine tuning solution or nuanced solution. If that's the way he's approaching it, which I do in fact think is the way you can untangle.
He's probably trying to say something like, "Hey guys, there's more than a memorial going on here.
Yeah, exactly.
There's more than a remembrance."
Right. And to which I want to say, amen.
But he's gone all the way over, past Calvin, past the Reformation, and glorified the medieval era and said the Reformation got it wrong.
Right. And then, even down to the architecture, the thing that we really glory in, with the moving of the altar and the pulpit and everything. So anyways, let's keep going because it gets into that.
Oh, wait, one more comment.
Okay. Yeah.
So 500 years ago, the memorial view came in.
Right.
And so is he painting now with a different brush that everyone since 500 years ago has memorial view? Is he heaping Calvin in with that, along with Zwingli?
Yeah.
With Luther? What's he doing? What's he saying?
He doesn't even mention.
Is he saying, let's go back?
Right.
I'm confused.
Totally. Yeah. It must suck to be Francis Chan. Imagine you got punks like us trying to look through his video.
Yeah.
He's just
I said to a friend today, I said, what we're going to do today in the podcast? We're going to tackle a big name so we can feel better about ourselves. Because every now and then it's just good to bring a big guy down so we feel big.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm just seeing that video next. I don't know if you can see it on the screen share thing, but is Francis Chan Catholic or something? So, obviously it's created such a stir. He's not going Catholic, right? It doesn't indicate that from the video. But the thing is, you could see how it would perhaps appeal to you. You already, you see a movement towards liturgy today, and it's almost a reaction to the starving of evangelical churches from any sort of connectedness historically or tradition, and there's much in what he is saying that I really like and I think is a great point. So I want to make sure that we get to that as well, not just pull the guy down. But anyways, let's keep going.
Something to consider. While I won't make a strong statement, I will make a statement about this. It was at that same time that for the first time, someone put a pulpit in the front of the gathering.
Yeah.
Because
Ambrose,
before that, it was always the
Chrysostom.
body and blood of Christ
Yeah.
that was central to their gatherings. For 1,500 years, it was never one guy and his pulpit being the center of the church. It was the body and blood of Christ.
All right. Now, I mean, I think that's a good point. I like the point. I think this is why we do weekly communion. This is why our church needs liturgy. This is why, it is more, it's not just about the preacher, right? And I think, to just start off maybe on a positive note this time around, certainly, I mean, imagine coming from that MacArthur kind of environment where you've got 20,000 people. I mean, it's all about MacArthur, whether he likes it or not.
Yeah.
There's no confession reeling it together. There's no anything. It's just about MacArthur. It's about this one dude and anyone who can preach like him. And look, as good or massive props to MacArthur for being able to handle that weight and not crush under it over the years. But it's just, you could see how someone would react to that and go, you know what, this was never actually meant to be like that. And then of course on the charismatic megachurch side, that's definitely the way it's gone. And I mean, Acts 29, it's part of the culture.
Yeah.
I think even Banner of Truth and, those guys, it's just, there's always a big sort of person, theologian at the center. And so I think, one of the things, just this recent holiday, actually, I try to stay away from church, not church in general, but church at GraceNet. And went to the Reformed Church. And
Good. Me too.
Yeah, did you really? Cool.
Yeah.
It's my favorite church to go to. I mean, it's great. And one of the reasons I like it is because of the liturgy. I mean, the sermon's going to be okay. It's going to be solid. It's not going to be doctrinally incorrect. So that's dependable. And, if you go there with a mind to want to learn and hear what the word has to say, I mean, you're going to get fed. But in terms of, you can just depend that there's going to be more than that. It's going to be a faithful liturgy. There's going to be confession. We're going to literally going to, confess the Apostles' Creed even. There's going to be that power and unity together, just at that body level. There's going to be the Lord's Supper. There's going to be just all these things. And I think you feel it when you have a church that doesn't have a pastor, or a church that perhaps the pastor is, going through a difficult time, or perhaps just is weak in pastoral ministry or preaching ministry, and the church can still flourish, and you could still get excited about going to church and want to worship together. It worries me. It worries me when the whole culture, today it's just we can't get around it, but the whole culture is just around one massive guy. And if the sermon isn't absolutely amazing, then it's like, why even bother go to church? Just rather download a better sermon or something like that. And so yeah
I mean, let me just agree again with the emphasis. I mean, I think you and I would agree that the Lord's Supper would be the climax of the service. We're building it up to God authenticating his own word with the symbols, with the engagement that we have with Christ in the supper. And so it crowns the preaching of the gospel as God in his own hand puts his signature on it in the Lord's Supper. So, I mean, from that point of view, I completely agree. I remember going to a church recently where, the communion thing was just sort of let's just throw it out there. And it was even before the preaching. It was tacked on as a little devotional thing that went on during part of the service, but it wasn't given its due. And so from that point of view, I'm with Francis Chan. I want to give it a proper emphasis. I want it to be held up in the life of the church. It should be the crowning aspect of our worship on the Lord's Day. But I do think he is overstating the case. Yeah,
well, as soon as we go into architecture in general, I don't like it. Any kind of architectural argument for me just freaks me out a little bit, because everyone tends to overstate everything at that level. Firstly, I don't even want to place stuck like that on any kind of building to begin with. So maybe it's just the church planter in me, but we move from building to building, and I'm not going to not meet in a building because it has some sort of architectural feature about it, or it just feels like you're opening the door to all sorts of trouble that way. So whether it's got a stage or a pulpit here or whatever, I mean, basically the thing is, you want a place. How do you make the Lord's Supper central? Well, you do it frequently. You give it a prominent place in the liturgy. You know, how do you make the word central? It doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously you have to stand in a place that's going to work, but you know, it's more like the the culture around that, you know, the understanding around what's happening, the reverence involved. It's not.
Isn't it maybe a false analysis to say that it was the Lord's Supper being replaced with the man, as opposed to a rediscovery of sola scriptura and placing the word back at the center of the worship?
Yeah, well, that
was the main thing that had been lost.
And architecturally, that's what was being represented for sure.
So I mean, maybe he's picking on celebrity Christianity, but you know, was that really what was going on at the time of the Reformation, that they're trying to exalt the celebrity?
Yeah, it's interesting. Luther didn't do that, right? The Lutheran churches don't have do they have the pulpit off to the side? I think they might.
Yeah, most Anglicans, Lutherans, all the old churches,
which
was never put in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so that's something to think about right there. But I do know, I remember in Preaching and Preachers, Martin Lloyd-Jones makes a big deal of this and says, "Listen, we got to have this pulpit in the middle. You know, we got to make a big giant pulpit, basically, and for that reason, just we want to make sure that the word's always central." And that's fine, we agree. But as long, I mean, again, does it have to be an and/or thing? I suppose is my one of the setups that I really like. If we're going to talk form and function and architecture and that sort of thing, in a lot of the Reformed churches, you see the pulpit and the table, the same sort of thing. And if you know what I'm talking about, it's got like usually a big giant pulpit, and then it's sort of extended into a table, and then the Lord's Supper will be there the whole time. So the supper is administered from the same place the word is preached. So you've got some powerful symbolism going on there. In which case, you know, the whole thing, if that's happening weekly, the whole thing becomes almost a moot point. You know, But I suppose the problem comes in even in Reformed churches, and sometimes the supper only gets celebrated, you know, once a year,
quarterly
sometimes.
Or whatever.
Yeah, and that's you know, you're gonna you know, bring about the same sort of sense of starvation. I think frequency is an issue. Yeah, frequency of the Lord's Supper. What's happening in the supper? And
so if he went to a church where they were having it weekly, he wouldn't be making these comments.
I don't think so. And if they knew of, and if they taught a sacramental view of some sort. You know, how could he make these comments? I don't understand how any of these comments could even work. And unless you're arguing implicitly for something he's not saying right there, you know, in open, that he actually wants a sacerdotal view, you know, he's gunning for an actual...
the literal body and blood. I mean, even the Westminster Confession denies, even the 1689 denies a carnal or corporal taking. It's by the Spirit,
right,
through faith. It's a spiritual partaking, not a literal. So, I mean, he is not sticking to a Reformed confessionalism here.
No, that's true.
Maybe he's wanting a pre-confessional simplicity as opposed to a deliberate Catholicism. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe he's romanticized and idealized the pre-Reformation era, and he just wants some of the simple view back, that we just adore the mystery. I don't know.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
it's confusing language one way or another.
Yeah, it's just not detailed enough. So he could be. I think the thing that's causing the stir is that, and really he should have. I mean, obviously after we joking around before that we're giving him a hard time by just sort of jumping on the bandwagon, but really you got to have some level of responsibility for this, because if you're going to go out and make statements like that, you know, people are going to be shocked, and there is going to be a bit of a stir. So I mean, so if he is saying real presence, you know, that's sorry, not real presence, literal body and blood, and he is implicitly gunning for a back to Rome view. Obviously, there's an issue with that. But if he's simply using that language and kind of bringing into everything that's not memorial, and he's just making a simplistic statement there again, then that's fine. But I don't think, it's interesting, just what you said earlier, like if he went to a church that was celebrating the weekly supper, and they held a high regard, sacramental regard, maybe even like a Lutheran consubstantiation sort of thing, would that satisfy him? I don't know, based on what you've heard there. I suppose that's where we have to watch this space.
Should we carry on watching it?
All right, we're nearly done.
And even the leaders just saw themselves as partakers. And oh man, we're not worthy, we're not worthy, we're not worthy. I say that because the church is more divided than any time in history. What does this book tell us clearly? That he does not want any divisions in his church. And for 1,000 years, there was just one church. Did you know that? We're so used to growing up in a time when literally there are over 30,000 Christian denominations right now. But for the first 1,000 years, there was just one.
Do we want to stop it there?
Yeah. Yeah, again, I mean, it's almost like, actually it was interesting, John Cooper said that it's almost like he's got onto some Roman Catholic answers website, you know, or some apologist, where it's the classic thing they would bring up, right? It's just,
exactly,
you know, and it's ill-informed at some level. It's not really, you know, there wasn't only one church. First of all, what about Eastern Orthodoxy? You know, let's not, you know, let's not even go there. And then, and then
what about the Donatists?
Even exactly. It's just way more complex than that. And and then even now, I mean, you know, denominational part of the Protestant ethic is that you are not one by denominational hierarchy, but by your spiritual union to Christ. So, you know, denominations are a matter of your conscience before that one Christ. But you know, it's just it kind of misses the boat on both of those sides, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what he's going for. So if we all have a single united view on the supper, would that make us unified?
Exactly.
What does he believe? It's like coming back to a Roman view of the supper would reunite the church and all denominations would go away.
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what he's saying. Yeah.
Well, maybe what he's saying is that there was certainly, you know, what you do see, and what obviously is lamentable at some level, is that in the early church, they just cared so much about the sacrament, right? They just, I mean, I'm thinking very early now, where they used to run from house to house and make sure they all had the same loaf, and you know, and you had all sorts of interesting little developments out of that, as you mentioned, the Donatists and whatnot. But I think, and there's something about that that's lost, right? In that, through the memorial view, or through just the fractioned sort of every man is his own pope, and he's got his own Bible, and everyone's doing his own thing, and that's going to create such a level of disunity that we're not even able to see straight together on the Lord's Supper. And maybe there's just a yearning, you know, which is healthy, I think, for an ability to just do what the church originally saw as such a solid expression of unity, and not to be divided over this one thing.
Yeah, I'm just struggling to see how the problem of 30,000 denominations is going to be solved by a return to a pre-Reformation view of the supper.
Yeah, that's true. That's not I don't think that's going to happen.
We have.
No, that's true. That's right. Yeah. And of course, it's not going to happen either. That's the big thing, you know. So it's almost like, you know, and it comes almost down to that basic Roman Catholic, or even like sometimes you're talking to a Watchtower Society guy who makes this critique of, look, this is why I'm not a Christian. I'm a Jehovah's Witness, because, you know, we have one organization, and you know, that kind of critique. The thing is, I mean, it has to. Was it ever a realistic thing? Was it ever on the cards? Did Jesus ever want one, you know, monolithic view and hierarchical structure? It just doesn't strike me as realistic.
My understanding of Jesus' high priestly prayer, when he prays that we would be one as he is one, my understanding is that prayer was answered on the day of Pentecost.
Amen. And is objectively the case.
One, as at least in some analogical way in which the Trinity are one. We have a spiritual union with one another as we have spiritual union with Christ. In the way in which the Father, Son, and Spirit, we have an analogical union to their union within the Trinity.
It's got to be the way you view it. Yeah,
that's something that God does. It's a prayer that God answered, and it's not something that we can create.
No, agreed.
And so I think he's assuming a view of unity here, which I think is part of the Roman Catholic apologetic.
Yeah, that's true.
And somehow he snuck it into his discussion here, and it's confusing.
It is, yeah. Because you want to resonate with the yearning for unity, of course. Even beyond that spiritual reality, it would be great. It would be great if everyone was united. And as he goes on to say, everyone's sort of excited about being, receiving this, being with Jesus around, worshiping in the church. I mean, of course, who doesn't want to see the whole world excited about that? But, one of the things is just even culturally, like just having bounced around a few cultures, you get, as soon as you start saying, hey, we've got to have this one like church structure, it's just impossible to work out. One culture needs to dominate, and then you have this, this form of Christendom that you basically saw for 1,000 years, which wasn't healthy. I mean, it's not good when you go to an Indian church or an African church and you see them wearing obviously Italian-looking sort of garments and just embracing a tradition that's really not what the Bible asks them to embrace. But and that's inevitable. You have to go in that direction if you're going to kind of bring it all together at the institutional level. I suppose just being Baptist, being Protestant, it was one of the best things that happened when we finally decided, hey, let's let the unity be where it needs to be in the Spirit. Let's do what we can to express that unity. And that's going to look differently depending on the conscience and what we can do as we stand and fall before our own Master. And what is, how are we able to join? Well, that's going to depend on where we are, how many churches are around us, what kind of churches, what kind of setting we're looking at. It's just going to look vastly more complex than any obviously, look, this is the one church, there's the one guy, there's the one sacrament for you. It just couldn't be what the New Testament is talking about, in my view.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. All right, cool. We got about
speed on.
We got a few minutes here.
What was interesting is communion was at the center of the room every time they gathered, and it wasn't a pulpit.
Sounds brethren.
Preached after studying in his office by himself for 20 hours. See, right now we've got guys like me that go in a room.
I wish he had studied
study,
for 20 hours.
Yeah.
That's what I was doing for years. Meanwhile, other guys went in their rooms and studied, and then we started all giving different messages, so many contradicting each other. And pretty soon it's, well, I follow Piper, I follow Chan, I follow, it's just like everyone's following different guys.
Should we stop it there?
Just saying,
Yeah.
Do you think maybe that he is describing a form of Christianity that lacks confessional unity?
Absolutely. It's kind of what I was alluding to a little bit earlier.
So
yeah,
I was
exactly.
thinking, well, I don't feel that problem that he seems to be feeling.
Yeah, exactly. On a few different levels. You got the sacramental view. It's important. I would hate it not to have that. So I can feel his pain at that level.
Yeah.
Secondly, I do hate the whole not having a confession thing. It's just because you must, as we were saying earlier, it's either going to be John MacArthur or it's going to be this guy. What else have you got? You've got the guy in the pulpit. So again, I feel the yearning. I totally get it. And what strikes me about that is obviously he was at the center of attention, and I would have felt that at such a high impact level. And, if he wasn't feeling easy with it, can you imagine trying to just keep going on that juggernaut? It'd be horrible. So you can tell he's kind of burnt in some ways, still trying to get over that. But at the same time, again, just what we've been saying throughout, is sort of like 1, 2, skip a few, jump a million hoops, when there's some solid options on the way, which really don't leave you with this feeling at all. And so that's important to say. It really is awesome. It's almost like a big plug for confessionalism, though. I think, it really does.
Yeah,
it's making a
confession
case
would
for
have
that.
saved him from all of these mistakes.
I think so. At least it would have taken that edge off, and then he could make some more sober-minded forward movement. If he wanted to go Roman Catholic,
I was
he could deal with the issue.
I was having a discussion with someone today, and we were talking about, because I tried to explain how, at least in yours and mine and our Fellowship of Reformed Baptist Churches and in those influenced by Mike Horton and a few others, we talk about the call to worship the word calling us, the hymns being the singing of the word, the giving being the supporting of the ministry of the word, our prayers being guided by the commandments and the promises of the word, the preaching being the exposition of the word, the Lord's Supper and baptism being the visible word, and the benediction being the word that sends us out with blessing and promise so that we can obey the word in the coming week. And so he said, well, are you subjecting the supper to the word? And I said, well, that's wrong-headed. You see, word and spirit always go together. And if you have a view of the Lord's Supper that makes it magic over here, something that works ex opere operato, in and of itself, without faith, without understanding that it's a magical experience over there, then you're divorcing word and spirit. But if you understand that the sacrament of the Lord's Supper is a blessing because your faith is engaged, as your understanding is being engaged, as what is represented in the elements, pulls your mind and understanding into what's going on, then it is simply it's another aspect of the word where word and spirit work together to bring it. So this disjunction between word, the preacher, the pulpit, and the table, as if they're not intimately combined, I don't resonate with it at all.
Yeah, it's the word. I love the way we talk about the sacrament being the visible word. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Kelvin was really big on that. And so, you're not, what are you doing? You're not subjecting one to the other, or you're just simply saying the one is in this way related to the other. It's just one of those things. Yeah. But, hearing you talk as well, it kind of reminds me of, if we're not separating word and sacrament, we're separating word and spirit. And, it's almost like all these movements are just coming out of these false separations. We just keep them, it reminds me of Sproul saying, to separate a soul from its body is to kill it. To distinguish it is to do it no harm.
Amen.
And it's just, it's just distinguish people. Stop separating, and let's just stop killing things. Yeah. So, it's
and what about the comment that he made that this terrible thing that's going on today where people are studying the word for 20 hours for a sermon?
Oh, that's what I was going to say. Like
to me, that's the glory of the modern church.
Right.
I mean, God has given us translations. He's given us commentaries. He's given us Bible colleges. He's given us specialists. We have the languages. We've got this ability to get deep down into the true meaning of the word, and mine its depths. And he's pouring cold water on that. Right.
And it's not even like,
I'm finding that to be very strange.
Yes, and it's kind of to our shame that we're not studying more in some ways. I think, if anything, the problem is no one's studying enough. I mean, you got the few guys there that are doing a great job, but in general, I think pastoral ministry is swamped. There's not enough culture to create that time for the pastor, and it sort of moves in. I wish it was the case, as you said earlier, that most people could get off and study for 20 hours. And, I think the world would be a better place if that could happen. But, it's interesting. If it wasn't for the literal body and blood piece, it's almost like what he would be going for here is straight up Darbyism, which is really do you remember the whole thing?
Anti-institutionalization.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, well, let's even keep the Lord's Supper in the center of the room. They literally have it in the center, and everyone stands around it in a circle, and no one will study. We just kind of make it up as we go on the Sunday. It's really just more about sharing around. It's almost like the only thing missing is that maybe who knows? Maybe he's going to start like a whole new Darby Brethren, like transubstantiation. That I don't know if we've ever had that before. That'd be interesting. But
and will it be every man preaching as well instead of just the one man?
Yeah, well, I mean you'd have. I mean, look, if you don't have the one guy, the Bible is written in a different language, in a different context, in a different culture. Unless you're already Greek, Hebrew, and have some strange pre-existent insight into those worlds, it's going to take some study to bring anything intelligible out on a Sunday. Otherwise, everyone's just going to get anemic. And you're going to start, your messages are going to start getting stupid, and that can carry you for a week or two. But I think you see this in some church cultures. It's just like, oh my goodness, really? Is this? It's really, we have more hope of turning to our study Bibles at that level. So what maybe it's a monastic thing as well, because I know he's got this big monastic sort of bent, that new monasticism, and
Yeah.
he just wants to get away. It's got the hardcore charismatic thing in the background as well. And
I really resonate with his spirit because, like, I think he and I are quite similar. That's
Right.
why I think I'm just seeing the mistake so clearly.
right,
Because I think in very similar ways.
like freakishly extremist.
Just that overreacting, kill
Exactly.
the whole thing and start again fresh sort of thing,
Exactly. Yeah, that's totally. And again, like those guys are typically the guys that are super passionate about things, and you really appreciate it when they're on something. But yeah, I mean, also,
Neo-radicals.
it's the double-edged sword there. Yeah, totally. All right. So hey, one more little clip here.
I believe there was something about taking communion out of the center of the church and replace it with a gifted speaker. Not that that gifted speaker is not a part of the body of Christ and a gift to the body of Christ, but the body itself needs to be back in the center of the church. You guys, I've been dreaming about this. I've been praying about this, going, man, I would love it if one day in our country, here in the U.S., people understood the body of Christ, that they were just a part of it, and they got excited to gather and partake of the body and blood of Christ. And they celebrated together, and that's why we gathered.
All right. So
I just want to comment on the way he's pulling a fist. That's not how you pull a fist.
all right, you'll break your thumb, right?
It's a very important point. Very good tip right there.
It's okay to preach with that fist, but if you're going in for the kill, you want to get that. So here's something he's saying that I think that I resonate with deeply, and just stepping right out of his own thing now on any sort of appeal to literal body and blood, but seeing the value of confessionalism, and now thinking specifically about the Lord's Supper and the sacrament and a sacramental view. And I'm thinking now of Calvin's real presence view, which I think is the best representation we have. If we don't get that right, we're moving into an age now where church is going to be increasing. I mean, it's always been a struggle, right? To where is the relevance in going to church, getting people to church? But never have we had sermon downloads the way that we have. Never have we had ways of coming up with pseudo community the way that we now have. And the reality is, the only thing obviously the whole church service is there as a means of grace, but you can't click to receive communion, and pretend that you're at that church receiving the same blessing. That is a means of grace that is promised to the church. And unless you have a view that can dig right into that, and unless you're preaching something like that, really, you're going to struggle to substantiate why you even need to come to church. And I'm not trying. It sounds a little bit like I'm saying that we need to find a way to make church relevant. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying Jesus has made church relevant, and the thing is, we've stopped understanding why that is. We've made other reasons which are now crumbling. Francis Chan is picking up on that and freaking out about it, because your gifting is only going to go so far, your megachurch is only going to go so far. At the end of the day, it is Jesus promising to be with his church every Lord's Day. That is the thing that you need to come to church for, to hear from him, to experience his presence, to be sanctified by him. And if that's not happening,
and just a quick comment. He said, communion versus gifted speaker. On the day of Pentecost, when the people got saved, they sat under the apostles' preaching. They broke bread. They did the prayers. They had fellowship. Devoted. They gave alms.
Totally.
All together. It wasn't one or the other. It
well,
was this wonderful full liturgy, not a single centerpiece liturgy. Yeah,
exactly. And, who gives the presence, by where the presence of Christ is mediated by the Spirit who gives the gift to the preacher. It's the same Spirit and the same goal to show us the same Christ. So you can't set the one against the other. That's always a problem, but a helpful thing. So nice, Francis Chan. Thank you so much for bringing it up. I appreciate it. I appreciate that this is the topic of conversation. Nick is thumbs down because
I'm a thumbs down one on this one.
well,
I think he blew it and he confused a lot of people.
but you know
although his
what?
heart was right.
Do you know why? Do you know why you think that?
Why?
Because you're also an extremist character.
Yeah, but that's okay.
And so obviously you're going to jump too far. You're going to go too far in the other direction, you know? So anyways, bottom line is I appreciate that this is being discussed, and it gives us a good opportunity to plug confessionalism is what I'm saying. So we might not even be in disagreement there. Anyway, so that's
But the point is this. The point, Mike, is this.
okay. No, but the point really is
got to go to church.
No. My brother and I did that one, so we're airing this tomorrow. So you're not going to be going to church on Thursday.
I meant on the Lord's Day.
Okay, on the Lord's Day, double up. It's just like I just went through this whole awkward thing with my brother. I was going to drop that episode in the midweek, and he made this whole big spiel about going to church, and I was like, we're not even doing it.
I'll make a better spiel. You see, because the reason Francis Chan is wrong is because he doesn't have a proper ecclesiology. And so to get everything that he wants to emphasize, but getting it right, you've got to go to church.
Ooh, mic drop. I like it. Go to church. And on that point,